Welcome to First Parish in Needham, a Unitarian Universalist congregation founded in 1711 along with the town of Needham. We're a proud LGBTQ welcoming congregation, climate justice seeking green sanctuary, and level 2 sanctuary supporting congregation for immigration justice. Whoever you are, whatever your background, and wherever you're watching from, you are welcome here. My name is Peter Panoff, and I'm on the worship committee. We work toward making sure this weekly service happens and is the best it can be. We've had to put aside the playbook this year. As you know, what's happening right now at the congregation is very different from usual because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Although our building is closed, our faith community is open. We hope all of you will plug into our Zoom gathering opportunities throughout the week, including Zoom social hour after every Sunday service. You can learn more about all that's happening at First Parish by going to our website, uuneedham.org, or by following us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. To get the Zoom links, please sign up for our weekly email newsletter by going to our website and clicking Get Involved, then Newsletter, or by sending your request to office@uuneedham.org. Our sincere hope is that these online services and connection opportunities will help us keep the physical distance required during this pandemic without losing much of the spiritual, emotional, and social closeness that we treasure in our faith community. If you're watching this service as it live streams, please take a moment now to say hello and introduce yourself in the chat box. Welcome again to everyone, and good morning.
As we light our chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, we read words from 19th century Black Unitarian AME abolitionist, suffragist, lecturer, and author Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Let me make songs for the people, songs for the old and young, songs to stir like a battle cry wherever they are sung. Not for the clashing of sabers, for carnage or for strife, but songs to thrill the hearts of all with more abundant life. Let me make the songs for the weary amid life's fever and fret, till hearts shall relax their tension and careworn brows forget. Let me sing for little children before their footsteps stray, sweet anthems of love and duty to float over life's highway. I would sing for the poor and aged when shadows dim their sight of the bright and restful mansions where there shall be no night. Our world, so worn and weary, needs music pure and strong to hush the jangle and discords of sorrow, pain, and wrong. Music to soothe all its sorrow till war and crime shall cease, and the hearts of all grow tender and girdle the world with peace.
Hymn number 1051, We Are, was written and composed by Black Unitarian Universalist singer-songwriter Dr. Isai Barnwell. She was a member of the African American women's a cappella ensemble Sweet Honey in the Rock for 3 decades. Barnwell composed the song in honor of ancestors and lineage. Please join us in singing from home hymn number 1051, We Are.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Please say with me the covenant of our congregation, as will appear next to me on your screen. We gather as a loving community to encourage and comfort one another. We gather as a diverse community to support each other in our search for spiritual truth. We gather as a service community to live our beliefs through action and care for our world.
I'm super excited to have our special guest, Sophia, as we read about Sheroes today.
Oh, that's a great book. I think I remember receiving that as a baby shower gift for Sophia. Oh, yes, we like this book. Well, we're not going to start in the middle, buddy. Okay, we're going to start at the beginning. Here we go.
Okay. A is for awesome. 23 iconic women who changed the world, written by Eva Chen.
Hi, I'm Juno. There's a whole world of inspiring Sheroes out there. Here are some of my favorites. Ready for some adventure? Let's go. A is for the awesome aviator, Amelia Earhart, the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic.
The stars seemed near enough to touch, and never before have I seen so many.
B is for Beyonce, singer, songwriter, actress, producer, and all-around queen bee.
Don't try to lessen yourself for the world. Let the world catch up to you.
C is for the forever chic Coco Chanel, designer and OG boss.
In order to be irreplaceable, one must always be different.
Ready? Now you can help me. Turn the page. Quick. Okay, good job. D is for Dorothy Hodgkin, a crystallographer who won the Nobel Prize for succeeding in the impossible. And E is for the defiant suffragette Emmeline Pankhurst, who helped women win the right to vote.
We are here not because we are lawbreakers. We are here in our efforts to become lawmakers.
F is for the flamboyant and fierce Flojo, the fastest woman of all time.
When anyone tells me I can't do anything, I'm just not listening anymore.
G is for the groundbreaking artist, Georgia O'Keeffe, mother of the modernist art movement.
To create one's world in any of the arts takes courage.
H is for Harriet Tubman, the brave abolitionist who helped hundreds of slaves to freedom.
I was the conductor of the Underground Railroad for 8 years, and I can say what most conductors can't say. I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger.
I is for fashion legend, Iris Apfel, who proves that your own style is the best style of all.
When you don't dress like everybody else, you don't have to think like everybody else.
J is for chef and author Julia Child, whose zest for French cooking inspired millions.
Learn from your mistakes, be fearless, and above all, have fun.
K is for Katharine Graham. Katharine kind of spelled like you. The formidable first female publisher of the Washington Post.
Courage is when you have a choice and you choose to be courageous.
L is for Lucille Ball, comedic genius and the first woman ever to run a major television studio. And M is for Malala Yousafzai, whose rallying cry for equality and education was heard around the world.
When the world was silent, even one voice becomes powerful.
And is for the tempestuous and talented Nina Simone, singer, songwriter, and activist.
I'll tell you what freedom is to me, no fear.
O is for Oprah, self-made television icon, philanthropist, role model, the list goes on.
I wish you curiosity and confidence. I wish you ethics and enlightenment. I wish you guts.
E is for Pat McGrath, makeup maestro and businesswoman.
Creativity is the most important skill. Don't be scared to experiment.
U is for Queen Elizabeth I, whose quick wit, strategy, and tenacity brought a golden age to England.
I'm not afraid of anything.
That's a good one. What about this next page? Can you help me? Oh, look, R is for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just like your cool shirt. Supreme Court Justice and the Queen of Dissent.
Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you.
S is for Sacagawea, intrepid interpreter and guide for Lewis and Clark's historic expedition. Oh, thank you. T is for rock and roll superstar Tina Turner, who holds the record for the most concert tickets sold by a single performer.
I believe that if you'll just stand up and go, Life will open up for you.
U is for Ursula K. Le Guin, prolific and prize-winning science fiction author.
We read books to find out who we are, what we ourselves are and may become.
V is for Venus, Roman goddess of love, beauty, and victory. W is for Wu Zetian, the one and only female emperor in Chinese history. And XYZ is for extraordinary you and the zillions of brilliant, brave adventures you will have. Who's that? Oh, that's you. All done.
All done. Look at all
That's
those. Amazing.
Look at all the Shiros.
Yay.
Thanks so much for story time, Roberta.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend Katie and Sophia. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Thanks, baby.
It is now time to share with one another our joys and concerns from the past week. These joys and concerns were submitted to me at internminister@uuneedham.org by the Thursday before the service at midnight. If you did not submit a candle but would like to share this morning, you are invited to enter your message into the chat box on either YouTube or Zoom. As our service is live streamed to YouTube, we cannot guarantee that your joys, concerns, sorrows, or milestones will stay within the First Parish community, but you are always welcome to reach out to Reverend Katie, myself, or the Pastoral Care Associate of the Week, whose name was emailed in your emailed order of service, for pastoral care or to share more privately. If you're missing hearing each other's voices during this beloved ritual, may this also serve as a reminder to reach out to one another after the service. May this beloved community be sustained by your creativity and care for one another during this time. Our first and only candle this week is a candle of joy from the First Parish staff team. We are overjoyed that a third vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson one, has gotten emergency use FDA approval, and that they are partnering with Merck to accelerate manufacturing. We hope that the approval of this third vaccine will help get more and more adults vaccinated by the summertime in the ongoing effort to flatten the curve of this pandemic. For all the joys and sorrows that we still hold in our hearts, and in acknowledging the prayers of our neighbors near and far, we light one final candle. May the peace in this sanctuary be felt too in each of your homes, as we remember that even though apart, we are still deeply connected. Amen. Let us join together now in prayer and meditation. Spirit of life and love, God of many names, we rejoice with all of you who come today in joy. We know that in times like this, we need joy and laughter if we are to continue the work that is ours to do. Our hearts are also with those who come today with a sorrow or a fear or in tiredness or weariness. We direct prayers to Myanmar, where dozens of protesters calling for the release of civilian leader Suu Kyi over the past week have been killed in protests that were met with violence by the military. We direct prayers also to Ethiopia, where war crimes that have happened over the last 5 months sanctioned by the Prime Minister have been uncovered only over the last week. Between the thousands who were killed, the 280,000 displaced, and the fact that the situation for survivors is dire, with livelihoods destroyed, we are outraged at the humanitarian crisis that is only now coming to light. May we look to this loving community for resilience and hope when our own is in short supply. May we hold each other from a distance in the places that are the most tender this week. May we remember that even though physically distanced, we are still deeply connected. And may it be so. And amen. And now please join us in singing from home our meditative hymn this morning, Spirit of Life. The lyrics and music will appear on your screens.
This congregation has been supported by the volunteered time and treasure of its members and friends since its founding in 1711. This is the time in our service when we, the modern stewards of this church, offer what we can to build and sustain the congregation and the world we envision. For the month of March, we'll be sharing our collection 50-50 with the Grow Clinic at Boston Medical Center, a program that serves children diagnosed with failure to thrive. First Parish is in our second decade of partnership with the Grow Clinic, raising funds and often organizing the young people among us to assist with direct donations of non-perishable goods for their food pantry. The clinic also relies on financial donations for its outreach and educational services, which are not reimbursable by insurance companies or government programs. To donate to today's offering, you can use one of three different methods. You can use our Text to Give program through the number 73256 with the exact wording of "You Need 'em" space plate or Pledge 21 space $, and the amount you want to give. You can mail a check to First Parish at 23 Dedham Avenue. Or you can make a donation through our website, uuneedem.org, and select Donate Now under the Giving box. Whichever way, please remember to specify whether your donation is meant for the plate collection or for your annual pledge. Thank you for everything you are able to give to help support and sustain this congregation and the vital work of our community partners. Please take these next few moments to give what you can and know it will be gratefully received.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. Life seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone.
People done gone crazy. People done gone mad. People done gone the powers we all have. We were born to love, not hate. We can decide our fate. Look for the good in everyone. Celebrate all our mistakes. The silver lining. You still have to find
Martha Sharp spoke at our church when I was 12, and that was when I realized that ministry was something women did. Teacher, librarian, nurse, secretary had not felt like identities I wanted. The church was where I felt unconditionally loved, valued, and happy. Minister fit perfectly. I found when I applied to seminary, though, that not everyone thought a woman's place was in the pulpit. I arrived at my Harvard interview ready to discuss my senior research paper, what I had enjoyed in religion courses at Wellesley, and how I came to feel called to ministry. Instead, I found myself defending my ability to be both a minister and a wife. I was told there would be no scholarship money for me if I married. An educated wife is a luxury, said the interviewer. If your husband wants that, he can pay for it. Later at lunch with a divinity school friend, I was assured that my imagination was not in overdrive in seeing a hostile attitude, and moreover, that it was typical. I threw out the application and went to Andover Newton, which had a stated goal of getting 50% women enrollment in 5 years. I did my internship in a congregational church because UU churches looking for interns openly said they did not believe that I would stick to it and graduate, nor were they willing to pay me. Interns who need support should have it provided by a parent or spouse. When I did do the required UU internship, the board of the Boston area church that hired me was very proud of itself for offering me $25 to cover gas for the drive from Worcester that I would do twice a week for 40 weeks. It occurs to me, writing this and thinking about it, that enslavement is perhaps less of a standalone evil for UUs in New England than a pervasive willingness to exploit people who work for us. We have a history not only of not paying interns, but of not paying RE directors or choir directors. Typically, what we did was hire men married to women who had the skills to do these jobs and then paid a very ungenerous salary to have 2 full-time professionals. I am glad we have addressed this as a congregation and as a denomination and continue to do so. When I sought a church to serve, I expected gender bias by then, but there were still surprises. I look back amused at the church that wouldn't interview me because while the idea of a woman minister is intriguing, we are a small church in a small town, and we need to maintain an appearance of respectability. People, I'm applying for a job to be a minister, not a pole dancer. One church felt comfortable telling me that they did not wish to deal with the disruption of a maternity leave ever and would require that my husband and I delay starting a family for as long as I was employed there, and to ensure that they would be choosing our method of birth control. Eventually, a tiny church, which had reached the any warm body will do stage of looking for a part-time minister, took a chance on me. I had 5 wonderful years with them and went on to serve other small churches. Eventually, I was RE director here at First Parish. Change came. The church, so worried about its appearance of respectability, has now had several women ministers. And no church or seminary now would think it in any way okay to dictate the terms of a minister's personal life. Times have changed even at my alma mater. When I was at Wellesley, the college chaplain and 75% of the religion department professors were men. At my 40th reunion, the service for the alumni was conducted by a team of women chaplains, Episcopal, Muslim, Jewish, UU, Congregational, and Buddhist. A pew full of us religion majors wept. Not only the diversity delighted us, but whatever her faith, a student had a woman role model of faith leadership available to her. We had come so far So fast. We had not thought to see so much change in the brief span of our own lives. May we continue to grow.
Good morning. I'm Helen Lane, and this congregation has been my family for more than half my life. In 1970, when I became a UU, most of the ministers were men, with a smattering of women. The women were then, as we are now, the backbone of the church community, but not in major leadership roles. As more women joined the UUA ministry, lay women became empowered and slowly took on high-level positions. In the 70s and 80s, the UUA did not welcome women into major leadership roles. In the mid-80s, I worked on a campaign for Sandra Caron, who was the first woman moderator of the UUA and running for president against Bill Schultz. And then later on, I worked for Carolyn Owentoll when she ran against John Burens in 1993. This was a long-held glass ceiling, which was not broken until 2017, with Susan Frederick Gray. I was a member of the Mass Bay District Board for a number of years and president of that board in the late 1980s. I think that position was usually held by men, often ministers, but it was not unusual to have a woman. As women came into ministry, things began to change for the better. There was a strong movement towards collaboration between religious professionals and lay people, a recognition of shared ministry. The picture of minister as chief executive was and is being replaced by some form of shared ministry. In the 90s, I served on 2 denominational committees for a total of 12 years. As ministerial settlement representative, my group was mostly women ministers with some men. We met for weekend retreats twice a year and stayed at Picket House behind the UUA headquarters across from the Boston Common. Our meetings were lively, interesting, and there was time for relaxation and excursions. Our job was to guide the churches in our districts through the 18-month ministerial settlement process. I gained a sense of the UUA and what it did, and of our churches all over the country. As you might expect, the compensation consultants group, under the direction of the Office of Church and Staff Finance, was a bit more staid. It was primarily men with finance and HR background, and a few ministers. I loved being a ministerial settlement representative, finding that my gender and lay status was an asset. I endured the compensation committee. I probably was out of my realm. When John and I came to Needham in 1975, I was determined not to be seen as the minister's wife, but as my own person. Thanks to the care of this congregation, my concerns were for naught. Thank you, and good morning to all.
Well, that time it lit.
1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi.
I'm waiting. I just couldn't get the box top back on. Can you believe that? Goodness gracious.
That should be enough. I saw that, but well.
It makes it more human. All right, I'm going back in.
That's right. Go ahead.
All right, excellent. Ta-da. All right, so Tom G, you need 15 minutes to see something on my iPad? What am I doing?
Okay, you're going to be getting in, so Tom P ends the stream and reset the camera back so our TMP is off.
Okay.
And both of you, I'm going to be sending an email as soon as I see the camera.
Confusion has seized us and all things go wrong. The women have leaped from their spheres, and instead of fixed stars, shoot as comets along and are setting the world by the ears. In courses erratic, they're wheeling through space in brainless confusion and meaningless chase. In vain do our knowing ones try to compute their return to the orbit designed. They're glanced at a moment, then onward they shoot. They are neither to hold nor to bind. So freely they move in their chosen ellipse, the Lord of creation do fear an eclipse. They've taken a notion to speak for themselves and are wielding the tongue and the pen. They've mounted the rostrum, the quarrelsome elves, and, oh, horrid, are talking to men. With faces unblanched in our presence they come, to harangue us, they say, on behalf of the dumb. Arise, place woman again in her sphere, and teach her that her soul was not born for the skies, but to flutter a brief moment here. This doctrine of Jesus, as preached up by Paul, if embraced in its spirit, will ruin us all. At the Women's Rights Convention of 1848, held at the Rochester Unitarian Church 2 weeks after the famed Seneca Falls Convention, our spiritual ancestor, Euro-American Unitarian abolitionist and feminist Maria Weston Chapman, shared this satirical poem, The Times That Try Men's Souls. I'm grateful to our members, Tabby and Helen, for sharing their stories. That 130 years after that Women's Rights Convention in Rochester, times were still trying for men who wished women to stay in our spheres, to believe that we were not born for the skies, that we should still our tongues, set down our pens, descend from the rostrum. I hope to share some more firsthand accounts of UU women sheroes breaking through the stained glass ceiling. Two of the first major feminist works in the United States were published by our spiritual ancestors, Euro-American Universalist Judith Sargent Murray and Euro-American Unitarian Transcendentalist Margaret Fuller. Fuller and Sargent Murray are considered foremothers of American first-wave feminism, beginning to challenge the age-old European assumption that women were inherently inferior to men. In her 1790 On the Equality of the Sexes, Sargent Murray drew on the ancient philosophical and psychological dichotomy of nature versus nurture. She wrote, "May we not trace any deficiency in judgment's source in the difference of education and continued advantages? Will it be said that the judgment of a male of 2 years old is more sage than that of a female of the same age? I believe the reverse is generally observed to be true. But from that period, what partiality? How is the one exalted and the other depressed? By the contrary modes of education which are adopted. The one is taught to aspire, the other is early confined and limited. As their years increase, the sister must be wholly domesticated, while the brother is led by the hand through all the flowery paths of science." We hear in this Sargent Murray's universalist faith that women and men, the only genders she was aware of at that time, are inherently worthy and equal, but not treated as such by society. In her 1845 book, Women in the 19th Century, Margaret Fuller more explicitly lays the blame for this inequitable situation on the more culturally privileged and powerful gender. Were thought and feeling once so far elevated that man should esteem himself the brother and friend, but nowise the lord and tutor of woman, were he really bound to her in equal worship, arrangements as to function and employment would be of no consequence. What woman needs is not as a woman to act or rule, but as a nature to grow, as an intellect to discern, as a soul to live freely and unimpeded, to unfold such powers as were given her when we left our common home. Many Universalist and Unitarian women and men participated in the women's rights conventions that began in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. And women's leadership in our denominations grew over the next 50 years. The Association of Universalist Women was founded in 1869, one of the first lay church women's organizations in the United States, and the Alliance of Unitarian Women was founded in 1890. Reverend Antoinette Brown Blackwell was ordained in 1853 in a Congregational church, though her own denomination did not recognize her ordination, and she became a Unitarian. A decade later, Reverend Olympia Brown, no relation, was ordained a Universalist minister, likely the first woman minister in the United States ordained with the consent of a national denomination. Beginning in the 1870s, women ministers in both the Universalist and Unitarian denominations became marginally more common. In 1875, Euro-American suffragist, abolitionist, pacifist, and writer Julia Ward Howe convened the first ecumenical women's ministerial conference in Massachusetts. In the Midwest, 24 Unitarian women, many of whom were quietly queer, were ordained and served congregations, calling themselves the Iowa Sisterhood. By the turn of the century, there were some signs of improvement for women in public life, especially because of the strong women's suffrage movement. Thus far, the spiritual ancestors we've shared here have all been white. Here are some words from 1893 on women's political future from Black Unitarian AME abolitionist, suffragist, and writer Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who we also heard from in our chalice lighting. Today, women hold in their hands influence and opportunity, and with these, they have already opened doors which have been closed to others. By opening doors of labor, woman has become a rival claimant for at least some of the wealth monopolized by her brother. In the home, she is the priestess; in society, the queen. In literature, she is a power. In legislative halls, lawmakers have responded to her appeals and for her sake have humanized and liberalized their laws. The press has felt the impress of her hand. In the pews of the church, she constitutes the majority. The pulpit has welcomed her. Watkins Harper, like many of the early Unitarian and Universalist suffragists, didn't live long enough to vote in 1920. And as we've acknowledged before in this church, as a Black woman, she would have faced greater obstacles than her white sisters in exercising that right. In the early years of the 20th century, it seemed we were moving, to borrow an old Unitarian phrase, onwards and upwards forever. Euro-American Universalist minister and president of the Women's Ministerial Conference, Reverend Florence Ellen Collick Crooker, reported that in 1914 there were 75 Universalist women ministers and 17 Unitarian women ministers. But then there were stumbling blocks. The classic story of the decline of women in the ministry in the 20th century in our denomination centers on the Euro-American Boston Brahmin minister, Reverend Samuel Eliot, who served as president of the American Unitarian Association for nearly 30 years, beginning in 1900. As retired Euro-American educator and historian, Reverend Elizabeth Curtis wrote, Women ministers and their congregations, especially in the often raw and rapidly developing West, tended to emphasize family virtues, hospitality, and practical hands-on service to the community. Eliot saw these domestic themes as too small for an age of scientific progress and efficiency. He thought women unsuited for professional life. He wanted for Unitarian churches vigorous and manly ministers, qualified to take up the large issues of the time and to speak from their pulpits with authority. He did not value the remarkable accomplishments of women ministers, especially in starting and nurturing their thriving churches in Midwestern towns. Curtis continued, the new Ministerial Fellowship Committee adopted credentialing requirements which undercut women who could not attend a university. At AUA headquarters, Eliot snubbed women ministers who requested his assistance or visited Boston, citing management issues to justify his refusals to help them or their churches. Eliot's and the lay Unitarian leadership's gender discrimination effectively weeded out Unitarian women ministers for the next 50 years. In 1972, only 3% of Unitarian Universalist ministers were women. A major turning point fueled by second-wave feminism in the secular world was in 1977 when the National UUA General Assembly gathering passed the Women in Religion resolution. Whereas, it said, a principle of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth and dignity of every human personality and the use of the democratic method in human relations. And great strides have been taken to affirm this principle within our denomination, and some models of human relationships arising from religious myths, historical materials, and other teachings still create and perpetuate attitudes that cause women everywhere to be overlooked and undervalued. And as children, youth, and adults internalize and act on these cultural models, thereby tending to limit their sense of self-worth and dignity, therefore be it resolved that the 1977 General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association calls upon all Unitarian Universalists to examine carefully their own religious beliefs and the extent to which these beliefs influence sex role stereotypes within their own families, put traditional assumptions and language in perspective, and to avoid sexist assumptions and language in the future. This was easier said than done. We've heard from our parishioners, Tabby and Helen, about women's leadership in our denomination in the 1970s and 80s. Strides were still being made, though, with inclusive changes to our hymnal, women's organizing collaboratives, and the ordination of the first black woman to our ministry, Reverend Yvonne Sion, followed later by other women of color. It was only in the year 2000 that the number of ordained women finally equaled the number of ordained men in our denomination, the first denomination in which women reached such numeric parity. UU women ministers who began our careers in the 21st century, such as myself and Jenna, as well as former First Parish interns, the Reverends Sally Fritchie, Molly Hausch-Gordon, Maria Cristina Vlasidis Bergoa, and Sarah Gibb Millspa, we owe a great debt to those women leaders, those UU Shiros who came before us, the spiritual ancestors we shared about today, our first parishioners like Helen and Tabby, national UUA moderators Ginny Cordier and Alandria Williams, candidates for UUA presidents Sandra Karen, Reverend Carolyn Owen Toole, and Reverend Dr. Laurel Hallman, the first women presidents of the UUA, Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, who was appointed to the position, and Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, who was elected to it, and so many more committed and powerful women. The progress toward women's equality in our denomination also goes, there's some of that credit, also goes to every Unitarian Universalist man who, despite the historic power and privilege of that gender, chose to be allies to women by supporting our leadership and actively and mindfully deprogramming from our sexist dominant culture. Our denominational journey toward gender inclusivity is, of course, not complete. We still see fewer women, especially BIPOC women, than white men in prominent pulpits and denominational positions. Women ministers and lay leaders still experience sexist microaggressions and acts within their congregations, and trans women and genderqueer leaders face additional discrimination and disrespect. But still, we strive and continue to rise above the history of our denomination and the broader American culture it is rooted in. We rise for love and justice that we may see a better day. We rise in peace and service for our world in disarray. We rise to build up bridges for this broken world we see. We tear down walls between us that divide you and me. May we keep rising, keep leaping out of our forced spheres, keep supporting one another to grow our unique gifts for transforming the world. May this be so. Blessed be, and amen.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Hymn number 168, One More Step, was written by Canadian Unitarian singer-songwriter Joyce Poley and was originally published in a 1986 worship packet compiled by the Unitarian Universalist Peace Network. Please join us in singing from home hymn number 168, One More Step.
Typically, we make all of our announcements in Zoom Social Hour, but I wanted to make sure that as many of you as possible heard this message over the next 2 Sundays. That this may be our last fully pre-recorded Sunday service for the foreseeable future. Next Sunday, thanks to our worship committee tech team, we'll be gathering on Zoom to mark a year since we last gathered together in person for worship. And then on Sunday the 21st, our producer Tom Pugh and our member Tom Gaiman will be leading us in a new form of remote worship. You'll actually see me here in the sanctuary live, with pre-recorded music and elements from lay leaders intercut into the live service. We hope that a half-live service streamed over YouTube and high-quality HD will feel a little more like our pre-COVID worship to all of you. And we hope it will be simpler for the staff team to pull together the services. In future weeks, you may see me here with Roberta, Jenna, or Kate, because by March 21st, all 4 of us will be more than 2 weeks out from our second COVID-19 vaccination. We're not throwing caution to the wind. If there's more than one of us here in the sanctuary on a Sunday morning, we will all double mask, stay more than 6 feet apart from each other, and all the windows in the sanctuary will be open, regardless of the temperature. We will only remove our masks to speak into the microphones, which we will not share, and Tom P. and Tom G. won't even be here because they have an incredible tech setup and will continue to produce online worship from home. This is all under the advice of medical and HVAC professionals in our congregation and the recommendations from the CDC. At this time, we will continue to restrict access to the building on Sunday mornings to only staff. Please do not come here on Sundays, even if you have been vaccinated. The parish committee has not approved that, and it will be painful for us on the staff team to have to turn you away. Your staff team and the parish committee deeply appreciate your commitment to safe remote worship and programming and your ongoing dedication to First Parish in Needham and to one another during this challenging year. As we now close our worship, take these words, adapted from the Buddhist Karaniya Metta Sutta by modern Euro-American UU ministers Reverend Sarah and John Gibb Millspa, with you today as a benediction. In our religious tradition, it is not just ministers and religious professionals who have the power to bless. Each of us has the power to bless another and to bless the world. As we have been blessed, so we bless one another to be a blessing. Breathe in, breathe out. This breath we share with all that breathes. Feel the love of the universe flowing through this community into you and out into the universe again. Let the love of all the universe, your love, flow outward to its height, its depth, its broad extent. You are more than you know, and more beloved than you know. Take up what power is yours to create safe haven, to make earth a heaven. Give hope to those you encounter that they may know safety from inner and outer harm. Be peaceful and happy, healthy and strong, caring and joyful. Be the blessing you already are. That is enough. Our service begins when our service ends. Blessed be, and amen.